ऐसे बैंकों में पूर्व की व्यवस्था जो थी उसके अनुसार बैंकों के जमाकर्ताओं को अपनी जमा धनराशि में से मात्र 1 लाख रुपया तक की राशि होती थी और उस राशि को भी प्राप्त करने में कई मामले में 8 से 10 वर्ष लग जाता था। अब माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के निर्देशन में सरकार ने कानून में संशोधन कर जमाकर्ताओं की जो बीमित जमा राशि को 1 लाख रुपया से बढ़ाकर 5 लाख रुपया कर दिया है और इस कानून में अतिरिक्त संशोधन भी किया गया है। इसके फलस्वरूप अब किसी बैंक पर आरबीआई द्वारा प्रतिबंध लगाए जाने पर जमाकर्ताओं को 5 लाख रुपया तक की बीमित जमा राशि 90 दिन के भीतर आसानी से प्राप्त हो जाएगी। मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का आभारी हूं, जिनके मार्गदर्शन में सरकार द्वारा यह ऐतिहासिक कदम उठाया गया है। अब कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाते हुए मैं आरबीआई के गवर्नर श्री शक्तिकांत दास जी से अनुरोध करूंगा वो आके अपना विचार व्यक्त करें।
Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Ministers of State for Finance, Honorable Ministers and Ministers of State who are participating in this event from various locations, respected members of the audience who are presented here and the audience who are present in 16 different locations, depositors of various banks, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to participate in this event today. And this is an important milestone in the evolution of protection of depositors in our country. In my remarks, I would like to highlight 4 points, and I shall be very brief. The first point is that the theme of today's event, Depositors First, is a very important theme, and in fact, that is the guiding philosophy, that is the guiding overarching philosophy of the Reserve Bank of India in all its actions and in all its policies so far as banks are concerned. Our focus is to protect the resilience of the banks and, more importantly, to keep in mind the interest of the depositors uppermost in our mind, whether it is the banking regulations, whether it is our supervision methods, or it is any scheme that is announced by the Reserve Bank. Depositors' interest is always kept uppermost in our mind. The second point I would like to mention is that the entire deposit insurance facility in our country has traveled a long distance. But 2 significant milestones were achieved recently, which has already been pointed out by the Secretary Department of Financial Services. The first was in February 2020, whereby after 27 years, the amount to the depositors, the maximum amount was increased from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. 1 lakh was fixed in 1993, and it was enhanced to rupees 5 lakhs in the year 2000 after a gap of 27 years. That is the first landmark development. The second landmark development was that the payment now has to be made within 90 days. On the 90th day from the time the Reserve Bank imposes certain restrictions on withdrawal of money, the deposit amount of 5 lakhs or the actual amount, whichever is that is the deposit amount subject to a maximum of rupees 5 lakhs, the amounts will be paid. And consequent on these 2 legislative changes, the DICGC, which is entrusted with this responsibility of making the payments through the banks, it has now automated the claim receipt and settlement process. The entire technology has been leveraged and the entire process has been now automated. And I am happy to point out and to share this information that the first set of banks where 90 days got completed on 29th of November, all the claims were processed thanks to the cooperation extended by all the banks and in particular the public sector banks. I would like to express my appreciation and thanks to all the public sector banks and their managements. The third point I would like to mention is that Deposit insurance, the payment of the deposit insurance amount should be seen, and we see it as a measure of last resort. Our effort is always to see that the banking sector remains robust. The banking sector, all the banks, all the banking institutions, they remain robust and resilient. And therefore, the RBI has been adopting a proactive strategy to strengthen the regulatory guidelines, to strengthen the supervisory methods, and to look at things which will ensure that going forward the banks function in a very resilient manner. Just to give an example, we have come out with new governance guidelines for the commercial banks. We have constituted an expert committee for bringing about reforms in the urban cooperative banking sector. The report has been received, and we will be taking action on that basis. So far as supervision is concerned, we are no more going by symptoms. We are now taking up root cause analysis. We are looking at business models of banks to see whether they are viable without, of course, interfering in the commercial flexibility which the banks must have for their success. The fourth point that I would like to mention, that in all these, the depositors themselves also need to be very discerning. It's very important to keep in mind that higher returns or higher interest rates are usually, I repeat, are usually associated with higher risks. So just because a bank is offering higher interest, the depositors themselves should be very careful before putting in money while chasing such high returns, because usually our experience is that high returns, high interest rates are associated with higher risks. I am not generalizing. There are institutions which are offering higher interest rate and which are viable, but depositors should always be very careful. And in the Reserve Bank, we have a Depositors Awareness and Education Fund, and we are utilizing the amount available under that fund to create awareness and education among the depositors in this direction. The Reserve Bank remains committed to ensure that our banking system remains robust and resilient, but it has to be a joint effort. Every stakeholder, whether it is the management of banks, whether it is the board of banks, whether it is the various committees of banks, the audit committee, the risk management committee, the other committees of the bank, or any other regulatory authority that is associated. So therefore, it has to be a joint responsibility for all of us. In my last monetary policy statement last week on 8th of December, I had said that the country has demonstrated of working together during this entire pandemic, and India's moment has come where India can really become a growth driver for world economy. And that will be possible if all stakeholders in the banking system work together. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
मैं अब अनुरोध करना चाहूँगा माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी, कृपया आप मंच पर आएं और अपना संबोधन दें।
Respected Prime Minister, my ministerial colleagues on the dais and the ministerial colleagues who are in the various centers where depositors are having an interaction with them, Governor Reserve Bank, Chairman and EDs of the various banks, and most importantly, the depositors of the various banks who have come here today. It is today a very important day, according to me, both from the point of view of the depositors and also for the banking history of this country. We have shown, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, a commitment to the depositors. Depositors and their interest has been kept high on the agenda all through Prime Minister Modi's governance between 2014 and today. It is shown in various different forms. One was to restore the health of the banks through the 4R principles, where depositors' interests have been kept in mind, taxpayers' interest has been kept in mind, and as a result today, the public sector banks' health has so improved that today they are able to raise money on their own in the markets. It indicates that depositors and their monies are safe in all our banks. Equally, from 2019, when there has been a lot of distressed calls and voices of depositors whose monies were lying because there was a regulatory control on the banks and they were not allowed to take their monies back. Their own money couldn't be taken out of the banks by them. It could be for health-related expenditure, it could be for a function in their houses, or it could be for building one additional room in their houses. They could not take the monies back. So on the direction of Honorable Prime Minister, we made it possible in February 2020 budget to increase the insurance amount from 1 lakh to 5 lakhs. So that normal middle class households who've put their hard-earned savings in banks get their money in due time. There were cases of people who had put their money in deposits and waited for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years and couldn't get the money back because either the bank had to be liquidated or some kind of amalgamation had to happen. So the wait for the depositor was for eternal, but banks had to wait for resolution to happen. So to get over that hitch, Honorable Prime Minister directed us, isn't there any other way in which you can give the hard-earned money back to the depositors? So in August this year, during the monsoon session of the Parliament, amendments were brought in which the Honorable Governor of Reserve Bank referred to, so that the money is given within 90 days period from the time Reserve Bank as the regulator brings in some control over banks which are in distress. And as a result, today we see banks which were put under restrictions have their depositors receiving 5 lakh each. And this is a major step, a sensitive step, a step which understands the difficulties of the middle class of India. The difficulties of the middle class of India is what Prime Minister had responded to when he said increase the insurance. Then when he said it is now difficult in spite of the 5 lakhs being increased for people to get the money in time. So this in fact is the main driving point. But more importantly, I'd like to add, we did not deal with it in a prospective way. Normally, most of these laws, and ideally most of these laws, are applied prospectively from the date when it gets passed from the Parliament and notification is given from then. But here we saw that some of the banks were over years waiting for resolution, and depositors in those banks were also not getting relief. So exceptionally, this time we've made it applicable retrospectively so that people who have put their money and are waiting for 5-6 years will also get the benefit. So the customer has been kept in mind, the middle class hard-earned money has been kept in mind, and depositors' interest has been kept in mind, and that is why not only for those who have been effective from the day the law has been passed, but also earlier, those who have been waiting for their monies have all been included. One last word, the approach of this government under the guidance of Honorable Prime Minister has been sensitive to the needs of the middle class. You may think I'm saying something out of context here, but I will bring in the example of one of the projects launched by the government, sponsored by the government, the single window for affordable housing project called Swami. Today, again, because of the voices of distressed home buyers, all of whom had put their money in some projects so that they can have a house, and also took loans from the banks, were paying rents for their houses, ended up with neither the homes being given to them, but had to pay the EMI to the banks. For which, again, under the direction of the Prime Minister, sometime early 2020, we came up with a alternative investment fund mechanism which can fund these last mile completion for home buyers. I'm happy to say, Honorable Prime Minister, in this context, Over 1,40,000 home buyers are getting their homes back because of that one single window project. And these middle class home buyers are across nearly 33 cities in this country. 243 such projects are coming to a conclusion because of the single window. All this only to summarize that the voices of the middle class are heard and the government is responsive. And I thank the Honorable Prime Minister for guidance and for the way in which these projects have found light of the day. And more importantly, for the Honorable Prime Minister for giving us time today to share this moment of depositors' concern being addressed. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
मान्यवर, हमारे बीच में कुछ डिपॉजिटर्स जमाकर्ता यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। ये महाराष्ट्र, कर्नाटका, गुजरात एवं राजस्थान से यहाँ पधारे हैं और उनका विशेष अनुरोध है कि वो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के कर कमलों से उनको एक प्रतीकात्मक चेक का भेंट हो तो वो गौरवान्वित होंगे। सर आपके अनुमति से मैं उनको बुलाना चाहूँगा। सर श्री मनोज कुमार उमापति मिश्रा वो कृपया आए मंच पर। ये सिटी कोऑपरेटिव बैंक महाराष्ट्र में इनका खाता इनके पत्नी के नाम से मिसेस रागिनी मनोज कुमार मिश्रा जी। अब मैं अनुरोध करना चाहूँगा श्रीमती सुहास नवार जी से। इनका भी खाता सिटी कोऑपरेटिव बैंक महाराष्ट्र में है। अब मैं अनुरोध करना चाहूँगा श्रीमती वसुधा विनायक जोशी, जो श्री विनायक गोविंद जोशी के धर्मपत्नी हैं, वो उनके बिहाफ पर ये प्रतीकात्मक चेक ग्रहण करें। इसके बाद मैं अनुरोध करूँगा श्री अर्जुन रामदास यादव, इनका मंथा कोऑपरेटिव बैंक महाराष्ट्र में खाता था, वो कृपया मंच पर आएं। अब मैं अनुरोध करना चाहूँगा श्रीमती सत्यभामा अर्जुन यादव, इनका भी खाता मंथा कोऑपरेटिव बैंक महाराष्ट्र में था। इसके बाद मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री कृष्ण भगवान दास, इनका खाता गुरु राघवेंद्र कोऑपरेटिव बैंक कर्नाटका में खाता था, वो कृपया मंच पर आए। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री नागराज भारती, गुरु राघवेंद्र कोऑपरेटिव बैंक कर्नाटका। अगला डिपॉजिटर हमारे श्रीमती इंद्राणी एन, ये भी गुरु राघवेंद्र कोऑपरेटिव बैंक कर्नाटका में इनकी खाता थी। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री बोंटाला श्रीधर बाबू, ये भी गुरु राघवेंद्र कोऑपरेटिव बैंक के खाता धारक थे। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री किरण चंद, ये इनकी पत्नी का खाता है, मिसेस कोमल किरण चंद सिपानी, ये कपोल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक गुजरात से हैं, इनकी खाता वहीं थी। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्रीमती स्वाति बहन, ये भी कपोल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक सूरत, इसमें इनके खाता धारक थे। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री नितेश नानावती, कपोल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक के खाता धारक, मिसेस दीना बेन नानावती जी के सुपुत्र हैं। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा श्री श्रवण कुमार शर्मा, जो सीकर राजस्थान सीकर अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक के खाता धारक थे, वो कृपया मंच पर आए। सर, अनुरोध है कि ये डिपॉजिटर्स आपके साथ एक ग्रुप फोटो लेना चाहेंगे, आपकी अनुमति से। जल्दी जल्दी ले जाओ। सभी जमाकर्ता साथियों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। अब मैं अनुरोध करूंगा माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी से कृपया हमें संबोधित करने का कृपा करें।
मंच पर विराजमान वित्त मंत्री जी, वित्त राज्य मंत्री जी, आरबीआई के गवर्नर, नाबार्ड के चेयरमैन, डिपॉजिट इंश्योरेंस एंड क्रेडिट गारंटी कॉरपोरेशन और देश के विशाल बैंकिंग समूहों के सभी अधिकारीगण, अलग अलग राज्यों में अनेक स्थानों पर उपस्थित मंत्रिपरिषद के मेरे साथी, वहां के सांसद, विधायक और वहां रहने वाले सारे डिपॉजिटर्स, हमारे सभी जमाकर्ता भाई और बहनों, आज देश के लिए, बैंकिंग सेक्टर के लिए और देश के करोड़ों बैंक अकाउंट होल्डर्स के लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण दिन है। दशकों से चली आ रही एक बड़ी समस्या का कैसे समाधान निकाला गया है, आज का दिन उसका साक्षी बना है। आज के आयोजन का जो नाम दिया गया है, उसमें डिपोजिटर्स फर्स्ट, जमाकर्ता सबसे पहले की भावना को सबसे पहले रखना और इसे और सटीक बना रहा है। बीते कुछ दिनों में 1 लाख से ज्यादा डिपॉजिटर्स को बरसों से फंसा हुआ उनका पैसा उनके खाते में जमा हो गया है और ये राशि करीब करीब 1300 करोड़ रुपए से भी ज्यादा है। अभी आज यहां इस कार्यक्रम में और इसके बाद भी 3 लाख और ऐसे डिपॉजिटर्स को बैंकों में फंसा उनका पैसा उनके खाते में जमा होने वाला है, पैसा उनको मिलने वाला है। ये अपने आप में छोटी बात नहीं है और मैं खास करके हमारे देश को, हमारे जो मीडिया के साथी हैं, आज मैं उनसे एक रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहता हूं। और मेरा अनुभव है, जब स्वच्छता अभियान चला रहा था, मैंने मीडिया के मित्रों को रिक्वेस्ट की, आज भी उसको वो बराबर मेरी मदद कर रहे हैं। आज मैं फिर से उनको एक रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूं। हम जानते हैं कोई बैंक डूब जाए तो कई दिनों तक खबरें फैली रहती है, टीवी पर, अखबारों में। स्वाभाविक भी है क्योंकि वो घटना ही ऐसी होती है, बड़ी बड़ी हेडलाइंस भी बन जाती हैं, बहुत स्वाभाविक है। लेकिन आज जब देश ने एक बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया, एक बहुत बड़ी मजबूत व्यवस्था शुरू की है, डिपॉजिटर्स को, जमाकर्ताओं को उनका पैसा वापस दिलाया जा रहा है, मैं चाहूंगा कि उसकी भी उतनी ही चर्चा मीडिया में हो, बार बार हो। इसलिए नहीं कि मोदी ने किया इसलिए करना है, ये इसलिए जरूरी है कि देश के डिपॉजिटर्स में विश्वास पैदा हो सकता है कुछ लोगों के गलत कारणों से, गलत आदतों से कोई बैंक डूबेगा, हो सकता है, लेकिन जमाकर्ता का पैसा नहीं डूबेगा, जमाकर्ता का पैसा सुरक्षित रहेगा। ये मैसेज से देश के जमाकर्ता में विश्वास पैदा होगा, बैंकिंग व्यवस्था पे भरोसा पैदा होगा और ये बहुत जरूरी है। भाई और बहनों, कोई भी देश समस्याओं का समय पर समाधान करके ही उनसे विकराल होने से बचा सकता है, लेकिन हम भली भांति जानते हैं वर्षों तक हमारे यहां एक ही प्रवृत्ति रही कि भाई समस्या है, टाल दो, दरी के नीचे डाल दो। आज का नया भारत समस्या के समाधान पर जोर लगाता है, आज भारत समस्याओं को टालता नहीं है। आप जरा याद करिए, एक समय था जब कोई बैंक संकट में आ जाता था तो डिपॉजिटर्स को, जमाकर्ताओं को अपना ही पैसा, ये पैसा उनका खुद का है, जमाकर्ता का पैसा है, उनका खुद का पैसा पाने में नाकों दम निकल जाता था। कितनी परेशानी उठानी पड़ती थी और चारों तरफ जैसे हाहाकार मच जाता था। और ये बहुत स्वाभाविक भी था। कोई भी व्यक्ति बहुत विश्वास के साथ बैंक में पैसा जमा कराता है, खासकर हमारे मध्यम वर्ग के परिवार, जो फिक्स सैलरी वाले लोग हैं, वो फिक्स इनकम वाले लोग हैं, उन लोगों के जीवन में तो बैंक ही उनका आसरा होती है। लेकिन कुछ लोगों की गलत नीतियों के कारण जब बैंक डूबता है तो सिर्फ इन परिवारों का सिर्फ पैसा नहीं फंसता था, एक तरह से उनकी पूरी जिंदगी ही फंस जाती थी। पूरा जीवन एक समय एक प्रकार अंधकार सा लगता था। क्या करेंगे? बेटे बेटी